What do you do when the people who are supposed to know you don't even bother to look? I'm Clarice Dalton, and I've spent my adult life behind a bench listening to the worst of humanity try to twist the truth. I know how people lie. I know how they perform. But nothing prepares you for betrayal when it comes in soft tones, silk dresses, and a sister's carefully rehearsed smile. The invitation arrived on a Wednesday. Glossy white envelope, rose gold trim. The scent of some cloying floral perfume still clung to it like a warning. Inside the card read, "Join us in celebrating the engagement of Camille Dalton and Jonathan Pierce." There was no personal note, no hope you can make it, or even a "we'd love to see you," just cold print and a name printed in bold hers. Not mine. I wasn't even sure why they sent it. Then came the text. "Hi, sis. Don't feel like you have to come if you're busy. Jonathan's family is kind of high profile, so maybe don't wear anything too serious, okay? XXC not too serious." That's what stuck with me, as if my seriousness was a flaw, as if it hadn't built every brick of my life. Camille had always seen me that way, rigid, cold, forgettable. I was the sister in the shadows, the one buried in books, the one who didn't giggle at the right moments or charm the adults with false sweetness. I was serious, but serious got me a law degree. Serious put my name on court documents and national dockets. Serious made people call me Your Honor. But Camille got sparkle. She was the kind of woman who could talk herself out of trouble before she even walked into it. As kids, she'd break the rules and flash a smile that made my parents laugh instead of discipline. Camille's just spirited, they'd say. "Clarice, why can't you loosen up a little?" I learned early that silence was safer, that disappearing was easier than being mocked for existing. While Camille danced through high school parties and painted her life in glitter, I stayed in the library memorizing legal precedent and working toward the day I could be someone on my own terms. No one noticed when I got into law school. No one asked when I graduated early. When I was appointed to the bench at 38, the youngest judge in my district, I sent my parents a copy of the newspaper article with my photo on the courthouse steps. They never called, not once. But I didn't send it for them. I sent it for the silence. So when the engagement invitation came, something in me shifted. Not with rage, not with heartbreak, something quieter, colder, like a door finally closing. I didn't need their applause. I had earned something heavier respect, and I was no longer interested in being erased, so I bought a black dress, tailored, understated, just like my robes in court. I booked my own flight, rented my own car, declined the hotel Camille so generously offered. I didn't want their room or their story. I wanted the truth, mine. Because after years of being reduced to background noise in Camille's curated life, I was done shrinking for the comfort of people who never bothered to ask who I'd become. And the truth, they were about to find out. The estate sat perched on a hill like it was judging the world below. Glass walls, manicured hedges, a valet station lined with men in crisp uniforms who opened doors like they'd been trained in choreography. Everything about the venue screamed one thing: appearances. I arrived 5 minutes early, always 5, never more. Enough to show respect, not desperation. I watched from the rental car as guests filed in draped in designer labels and polite laughter. Camille's world was full of people who practiced charm like it was a second language. It was always a performance, and she was the star. I stepped out of the car heels, clicking against stone, the wind teasing the hem of my black dress. I walked through the entrance alone. No grand announcement, no warm greeting. The hostess offered me a champagne flute and a rehearsed smile. "Welcome," she said, eyes flicking past me almost instantly. She had no idea who I was. Perfect. Inside the room buzzed with the kind of energy that lives on forced smiles and small talk. Chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks above us, casting gold light over every Instagrammable surface. Camille floated through it, all sequin dress, sparkling arms extended like a pageant queen, laughing too loud, kissing the air near cheeks she didn't care about. I lingered near the back, partially hidden by a floral arrangement the size of a toddler. Sip, observe, disappear, a skill I'd perfected in childhood. Then I saw them, my parents. My father stood near the open bar, eyes blank, nursing a whiskey with the same detachment he'd always worn at our dinner table. Present, but never involved. My mother was a different story. She wore a blush pink dress at least 20 years too young for her, and a pearl necklace I recognized because I had mailed it to her 5 Christmases ago. She never thanked me, never even acknowledged it. Now it sparkled on her neck like it had always belonged to her. Fitting. She spotted me, hesitated, smiled faintly like trying to place a face she should know. Then she turned back to her circle without a word, not a wave, not a nod. Just silence. It was always like this. Camille performed. They applauded. I existed off stage. I found a seat tucked behind an absurdly large centerpiece, white orchids exploding out of crystal. Perfect spot. Out of view, but not out of place. And then she saw me, Camille. She approached like a reality TV hostess, champagne in one hand, the other, grazing every arm she passed. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I could see it, the twitch behind her lashes, the tension in her smile. "Well, look who made it," she said, voice syrupy. "Didn't think this kind of scene was really your thing." "It usually isn't," I replied, smiling just enough. "But I had the time." She glanced at my dress. Black, bold choice for an engagement party. I didn't explain. I'd learned long ago that depth was wasted on people who only knew how to skim the surface. Figured someone had to ground the palate, I said. She blinked, uncertain if it was sarcasm. Then she leaned in. "Just try not to make things awkward, okay?" she whispered. "Jonathan's family is very refined. They ask a lot of questions." I met her gaze, steady, quiet. Then maybe I said they'll get real answers. She laughed a little too loudly, like I'd told a joke. Classic Clarice, always so intense. And then she was gone, swept away in a blur of high heels and shallow chatter. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. That word again. Intense. A lifetime of being told I was too much, when all I ever tried to be was enough. Dinner came. Smoked duck, truffle, risotto, the kind of meal designed more for status than flavor. I picked at my plate unnoticed. Until he came. Jonathan. He approached with a politician's poise, tall, smooth, practiced. The kind of man who shook hands with both palms and probably referred to women as ladies in campaign speeches. "Clarice Wright," he asked. "Camille's sister." I nodded. "That's me." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She doesn't talk about you much. Wasn't sure if you two were close." I tilted my head. "We're sisters." He chuckled, unsure how to process that. "She said you do something in law, something like that." He nodded politely, already disinterested. Probably imagined I was a clerk, a secretary, maybe a government assistant. Whatever Camille had told him, it certainly wasn't the truth, but that was fine. Some truths aren't handed out casually. They're revealed when the timing is right. And that moment, it was coming. The clinking of forks against glasses signaled the shift. It was time for speeches. Camille rose from her seat, radiant in sequins that caught the chandelier light, like broken mirrors shining blinding sharp. She held her champagne with one hand and tapped her fork against the glass with the other. The room quieted with automatic precision, as if everyone knew their cue. She basked in it. The hush, the focus, the adoration. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight." She began, voice soft but calculated for acoustics. "Truly, I feel so lucky." Laughter, sighs, affectionate nods. "I know this may come as a shock." She giggled, pausing just long enough. "But I wasn't always this put together." More laughter. Behind my glass of water, I said nothing. Not a smirk, not a blink. In fact, Camille continued. Growing up, I was the wild one. My sister Clarice was the opposite. Let's just say very strict, very by the book. Pause. Smile. Wait for it. She once filed a formal complaint because I borrowed her sweater without asking. I was 13. The crowd erupted in laughter. Polished, performative. The kind of laughter people give not because it's funny, but because they've been invited to belong. I didn't move. My fork lay idle beside my untouched duck. She's always been that way, Camille went on, waving a manicured hand. Judgy, rigid. Honestly, I'm just grateful she showed up tonight. She's not big on family gatherings or, you know. She paused again, then delivered the punchline with a wink, smiling. Heads turned, eyes flicked to the far corner, my corner. She was looking right at me now, holding the gaze, daring me to react. I gave her nothing, just a small smile, calm as glass. Next to her, Jonathan nudged her playfully. Be nice, he said, chuckling like it was all harmless. Then he looked toward me, half laughing, half performing. But really, we're lucky she made time. Camille added, you work in, what was it? County records, Jonathan jumped in. Or maybe admin, he asked. Either way sounds like important paperwork. The insult wasn't even sharp, it was small. And that's what made it worse. They thought they were amusing. They thought I'd smile politely as I always had and let the room laugh me back into silence. But that's the thing about silence. It doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes it's just waiting. I wiped the rim of my glass with a napkin. Then I looked at Jonathan calmly. I'm sorry, I said, voice clear, composed. Where did you hear that? He blinked. Camille mentioned it. Said you worked in a government office. A few nearby heads tilted, curiosity peaked. I let the silence stretch, let the tension replace their certainty. I wasn't rushing this. I wanted it to settle in like fog filling a room. No, I said. That's not correct. Camille gave a nervous little laugh. Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. She's right, I said, still looking at Jonathan. I don't work in office administration. Pause. I'm a judge. And just like that, the room stopped. No gasps, no dramatics. Just an immediate, dense quiet, the kind that bends air and forces people to feel the weight of what they'd missed. Then a voice, small but unmistakable, from a table nearby. Wait. Judge Dalton. A woman in green turned toward me, brow furrowed. From the Eastman sentencing, Camille froze. Yes, I said simply. More murmurs now, whispers rippling like cracks in glass. Phones slipped from clutches under the tablecloths. Google searches launched behind polite nods. One man cleared his throat. A woman lowered her eyes. Another guest adjusted his tie too quickly. Jonathan's hand slipped from Camille's back. He was staring not in awe but in confusion, like he was seeing the outlines of a painting he'd never noticed before. You're a judge, he asked again, quieter this time. I nodded. Superior Court, 11th District. Camille's face didn't crumble. That would have been too human. No, her expression shifted from smug to stunned. She opened her mouth, then closed it like someone caught between two versions of the truth and unsure which one would survive the night. I didn't know you were still doing that, she mumbled. I thought you gave it up. I stood, not abruptly, but with intention. Every motion carried weight now, but not because I forced it, because the weight had always been there. They just never saw it. I folded my napkin neatly, placed it on my plate. Then I met Jonathan's eyes one last time. When people don't ask questions, I said softly, they shouldn't be surprised by the answers. And with that, I turned past Camille, past the guests, past my mother's parted lips and my father's pale face. I didn't wait for permission. I didn't wait for applause. The verdict had already been delivered. The air outside felt different, cooler, cleaner. Or maybe it was just mine again. I walked to my car without looking back. No need for a dramatic exit. No slamming doors or shouted truths. I'd already said everything that needed to be said, not with volume, but with precision. Behind me, I knew what was happening. Whispers stacking on whispers, eyes darting between Google search results and my name in headlines. A sudden recalibration, the kind that only happens when people realize they've made a mistake in public. I slid into the driver's seat, shut the door, and just sat there for a moment. Not triumphant, not even angry, just free. And then my phone buzzed. Once, then again. Missed call, Mom too. Messages. Camille. I didn't open them right away. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they'd say. And sure enough, when I finally glanced there, they were. You should have told me. Why would you embarrass me like that, as if facts were weapons, as if telling the truth when asked was an act of aggression? I didn't reply, because here's the thing they never understood. I never needed revenge. I never needed them to hurt. I just needed them to stop pretending I wasn't real. Inside that hilltop estate, Camille would be scrambling, rewriting stories, explaining, spinning. Jonathan would be Googling, trying to find out how many national cases I'd ruled on, wondering how he'd misread everything, how his smug little jab turned out to be the opening statement to his own education. My parents would be silent, the same silence they gave me for years, but this time it wouldn't feel like dismissal. It would feel like consequence, because the woman they ignored, erased, and laughed off wasn't a rumor anymore. She was fact, and facts have a way of shifting gravity. I thought once that if I became successful enough, serious enough, visible enough, they'd finally see me. But that was the mistake. I didn't need to be seen by people who refused to look. I didn't need their validation stamped across my life's work like some belated apology. What I needed, what I'd earned, was peace. And I'd built it myself. No shortcuts, no inheritance, no family name opening doors, just early mornings, quiet nights, long commutes, cases studied, and rest sacrificed. The unglamorous grind of consistency. And with that, I realized something else. They hadn't failed to see me because I was invisible. They failed because they were never interested in seeing anything deeper than themselves. I drove away slowly, not out of hesitation, but clarity. The farther I got from the estate, the lighter I felt. Not because of what I'd revealed, but because I didn't care who still didn't understand. There would be no follow-up, no family reconciliation montage, no holiday invitation with a teary, "We're so proud of you" tied in a bow. That wasn't the kind of story I lived in anymore. I wasn't the girl at the corner of the dinner table begging to be included in laughter that wasn't meant for her. I was the woman who built her life without needing to raise her voice. And now that silence, the one that had haunted me for decades, belonged to them. Let them sit in it. Let them feel it. It started small. A comment here. A subtle shift in tone there. Camille's carefully polished image began to fray not in scandal, but in doubt. The woman in green, the one who recognized my name, shared the Eastman case link in a family group chat that night. By morning, Jonathan's aunt had forwarded it to his mother. By lunch, half of Jonathan's family had browsed my court history, like it was a Wikipedia page. That's the thing about truth, it doesn't need a stage. It spreads quietly, powerfully. And when it finally arrives, it's impossible to ignore. Camille, the self-proclaimed socialite with perfect stories and exaggerated credentials, had made a mistake. She bet on appearances over substance. And substance, well, that was always my domain. The texts started again the next day. "Can we talk?" "You didn't have to do it like that. Jonathan's family thinks I lied. You made me look stupid." Still, I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I didn't owe her anything. She didn't invite me because she wanted me there. She invited me so she could control the narrative, to keep up the illusion. And when I didn't play along, when I simply existed as myself, it disrupted the entire production. That wasn't cruelty, that was clarity. According to whispers, Jonathan had questions. He started asking about Camille's resume, her past internships that somehow never had managers willing to vouch for her. The PR agency she claimed she was in talks with, turns out they'd never heard her name. The shine began to dull. He was engaged to someone who had spent years curating a fantasy while dismissing the only person in the room who had built a reality worth respecting. And for the first time in her adult life, Camille couldn't charm her way out of it. She tried, of course. Social media posts flooded in a carousel of engagement party photos, lengthy captions about blessed moments and beautiful sisters. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't even named. But she left a vague line buried in the third paragraph, so grateful for family, even the serious ones, who don't always show it but mean so much. I almost laughed. Even now, she was editing the past in real time, trying to rewrite history with hashtags and humble brags, as if a filtered caption could patch the cracks in her story. But I didn't correct her. I didn't need to, because for once other people had seen it. They'd seen her and me without the script she usually handed them, and no amount of charm could change the impression that had already been made. I didn't feel victorious. This wasn't a win in the dramatic sense. There were no trophies, no cheers, no gloating. It was quieter than that, more permanent. What Camille had spent her life performing, I had lived. What she tried to fake, I had fought for. And that kind of difference doesn't need defending. It just exists. Firm, unshakable. Jonathan never reached out to me. He never apologized. But a month after the party, I got a brief email from one of his cousins, someone I'd barely spoken to at the event. It read, "Didn't get the chance to say it that night, but I've followed your rulings for years. You've made a real impact. Thank you for what you do." There it was again. Not applause, not recognition, just truth. And for someone like me, truth has always been enough. Some people think the worst pain comes from being forgotten, but I've learned something else. It's not forgetting. That hurts. It's being deliberately overlooked, minimized, rewritten in real time by the people who once rocked you to sleep. But pain doesn't last forever. It changes, refines, hardens into something stronger. I no longer wake up wondering why they didn't clap when I graduated early, why they didn't call when I passed the bar, or why they never said we're proud when I made judge. That story is finished. I close that chapter without a final sentence from them, and I'm better for it. My chambers are quiet most days. That kind of sacred quiet that fills the room after something powerful has been said. It's a space I built not with permission, but with persistence. Each decision I render is weighted with law precedent and the quiet strength I've carried since I was a child, hiding in corners with casebooks while my sister performed for dinner guests. Every gavel drop is a reminder I didn't need their spotlight. I needed my seat at the bench, and I claimed it. I never spoke to Camille again about that night. Not because I was angry, but because I was done explaining myself to people who only listened when it served them. She sent holiday cards that year, photogenic smiles, gold foil a dog I didn't know they had. My name was spelled right. That was new. Still no mention of what had happened, no attempt to unpack the truth, just the same performance, the same script. I tossed it in the trash. My mother eventually called, left a voicemail that danced around apology like it might bite. "We didn't realize you'd done so well for yourself, honey. You should have told us. Your father and we just didn't know." That was the point, wasn't it? They didn't ask. They didn't care to know until it was embarrassing not to. And by then the damage was irreversible, not out of malice, but out of decades of neglect disguised as indifference. I never returned her call, because I wasn't interested in being reclaimed like some lost family heirloom suddenly deemed valuable. I wasn't missing. I was ignored, and that's a very different thing. Now I sleep well. I wake up with purpose, not proving. I surround myself with people who ask the second questions, who care enough to go beyond appearances, who sit in the quiet and listen. Because they want to, not because they're waiting for their turn to speak. I mentor young women in law, the ones who were told they were too serious, too cold, too much. I tell them what no one told me. They'll call you intense, wear it like a badge. It means they see your power even if they don't understand it. And I smile when they nod because I see it happen the moment their spine straightens and they stop apologizing for existing. My name doesn't echo in my family's dining room, but it carries weight in places they've never entered. Courtrooms, universities, panel discussions where real work gets done and real people listen. That's my legacy. Not the absence at Camille's wedding or the silence from birthdays long ignored. My legacy is the life I built when no one cheered, the truth I told when no one asked, the judgment I passed not just in court, but on the lie that you need to be loved to be valid. You don't. You just need to know who you are and never hand that truth over for temporary acceptance. So, no, I don't regret attending the engagement party, because I didn't go for Camille. I went for me, for the quiet girl who used to wonder if maybe she was the problem. I went to look her in the eye and say, "You were never the problem. You were the truth." They just didn't want to see it. And now they do. Even if they never say it aloud. Some truths don't need to be shouted. Some truths just settle in the room like verdicts final, undeniable, and entirely earned. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have lifted you up? Share your story in the comments. I promise someone else needs to hear it. And if this resonated, hit that like subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories of silent strength, strategic power, and undeniable resilience. You don't need the spotlight to matter. You just need to know your own weight and let it speak for you.